and Tom, I really appreciate your having me into Sages for having the session. I have to tell you a little selfishly, I'm going to fly here because I think the most interesting part of all of this is that you guys are ready to talk and ask questions. And I didn't introduce myself as to why I'm here. I'm obviously here because I was invited, but I accepted the invitation because I always learn a lot from these conversations, and not just from other people who are doing this, but when you guys ask questions, a lot of times it's, oh, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. So I'm going to get going here, and first thing, it's not fair that I'm the only one who's standing in this really cold room after sitting for so long. So who's on Epic? Stand up. Stand up, stand up, stand up. Move your little VT prophylaxis here. Almost everybody. Okay, then I'm definitely cutting my talk short. Thank you. I did not include Epic, so I'm going to invite a co-panelist up at the end of my talk so we can go through those questions. I love Epic. I kind of love it like I love my 13-year-old son for who he is. Epic is a billing platform. I love it for what it is, and all the bastardization that I can get out of it as far as research. But what I'd like to just fly through here is my assigned topic of some... I have some disclosures. Most of them are related to my relationships for funded research through ACER. And my objectives were to go through audit and feedback. I see them as very interrelated, and I'll just summarize the feedback part at the end. But for auditing, I really want to impress upon you that it's not you do all the work to get things in place, and then you decide what it is you want to look at, but rather you decide what it is you want to accomplish, very similar to what Tom said. And then you put your stuff in place based on the principles of what it is you're trying to accomplish. And let everybody else judge you the way they're going to judge you, length of stay, cost, whatever it is. But certainly stay in touch with why you did what you did and figure out a way to audit it. So looking at our system, we obviously don't agree with the way we are usually audited. Particularly as surgeons, we want to know how to get patients better faster. If they're in-house 4 days instead of 3, I don't care. If they're getting better faster, that's what I want. So there's a real breakdown between the two of us there. If we can compare what we're actually doing and what we're trying to accomplish, we can see that our system solutions tend to be they're going to monitor us more, right? They just want to know what we're doing. They're going to send out memos. They're going to get us going on things. Where what we want is actually an internal drive. It tends to be something that will be very multifactorial in solution. And we have an instinct and a mission to accomplish, as opposed to just waiting out till the next fiscal year report comes out. So we internally, particularly as surgeons, and not necessarily everybody on our team, so it's nice to talk sometimes, sorry VJ, to a mostly surgeon team here in this room and say, you know, we are where we are because higher, better, faster is what we do. And we can bring that to our patients by putting things in place. Our two systems already don't jive, so don't depend on the system, your healthcare system, or what we have in place nationally to take care of you and let you know that what you're doing is important. You're going to have to figure that out somehow on your own. Shortest distance, straight line, right? Put out your map, put your straight line on it, tell everybody to follow it. That's kind of like what we do when we put our protocols in place. How do you know if they did it? So at the end of your 6 months, you put your line in place. You say everybody needs to walk this way to be the most efficient, the most cost effective. How do you know? Did they do it and it caused it to get better, worse, different? If you're not there and you're off in the operating room, if you're doing something else and you don't know what they're up to, any one of these outcomes and actually any of these compliance schemes might have been true. And I think of that a lot when people give me a call and say, hey, can I have your protocol? Sure, I'm going to put the order set that you have in Epic on my Epic. Okay, no problem. My straight line goes this way. Hope yours does. Because that's not the trick. The trick is actually knowing that these are only straight lines, that you don't know what the compliance is, and you're not looking for outcomes if you're not trying to figure out exactly what does what in your particular system. My protocol's not going to do you any good. You have to figure out what it is you need to change. If you were to look at any of these protocols, you probably already have pieces in place. So don't tell me that you're not doing ERAS, because you probably already are. But what you need to figure out is what's different between your protocol and what it is you're trying to accomplish and what you're going to audit. I think an effective audit, as I said, begins with protocol creation, and that your audit really needs to mirror everything that you're putting in place as you go through. And I would say you need to manage it with intention. Don't just let some administrator give you a paper every 6 months. You need to know what it is you want to look at, how you want to look at it, which patients are going to be audited, and you need to understand what information is being given to you. And then you need to sit at the table and realize that you probably had a part in some of that low compliance. Or your buddy across the table might have, and it was a lot of fun to golf yesterday, but now you kind of have to sit there and go, hey, how come your patients don't eat until day 3? Can we talk about it? Those kind of things have to be part of the audit and feedback mechanism. We say that it starts at the very beginning when we have our starting or planning meeting with our protocol teams. The first thing that happens is we ask, what's your outcome of interest? Very often we get the same answer you already heard today, length of stay, decrease cost. But we really want to know, what is it you want to change for which patients? And if you have that in mind, you're starting on the right track. And as you go through, you start saying, well, that's nice, but where is that recorded? How is it documented? Where will you find it? We can get back to the EPIC, okay? This is the sort of the meat of what I wanted to mention is there are existing data sources that you can tap into for a lot of things you want to look at. There are some comparative ones. And then when you get into deeper levels, you're looking at protocol-specific or maybe even research databases. So I think the institutional ones, and I didn't list EPIC here because I find EPIC very difficult to get things out of the back of without having a special build or having somebody help me. I can chart review in EPIC probably more easily than going down to the basement used to be, but other than that, we don't use it a lot for our data management. But we certainly have administrators giving us numbers, giving us calculations, giving us length of stay. The advantage is it comes to you, right? They're doing it anyway, and they're going to keep doing it anyway. So when you make all this stuff look better because of enhanced recovery, it's just going to be happening, and you can see those changes happen. The disadvantages is they don't talk our language. The closest I get to numbers and everything that I want to deal with an administrator is usually CPT codes, not DRGs. I don't want to talk about case mix index, though I do now that I know what it means. So you have to kind of learn that language and know, you can't just say, oh, all my patients are sicker, right? You have to understand what that means. And they don't understand when they put my recurrent rectal cancer that went through a pelvic extent with IORT in the same bucket as my lap rights, that it doesn't make any sense to look at those from a clinical perspective the same, but those are colorectal codes. So you have to know those kind of nuances. This is what comes to us. I think I de-identified it enough. Don't take any pictures. But this was when we were putting proctectomy in place. I was able to separate out proctectomy and colectomy. And this is the kind of stuff you're going to get. You got to understand their definitions. You got to understand what you're looking at. And you got to understand that they put the most recent period first and all that kind of nonsense. So trying to figure those out. Comparative databases exist. I think the advantages is that we have certainly had some input in these. I would say NSQIP is probably our best known example, where we have some risk stratification. We have comparative benchmarking. Those kind of things mean a lot to us. So we can't say my patient is sicker when I'm compared within NSQIP. I get to say that this is a case that I did relative to somebody doing a similar case at another hospital, and this is how it compared. Every time we mention NSQIP, people say, I can't afford to have it, it takes too long, my abstractor's no good, or got pregnant, or something. And of course, there's a delay of getting the data. You don't really own, you own your local raw data, but you don't own the benchmark stuff. It comes to you in a report. So there are limitations, but it can be certainly a jumping off place, and you're gonna see those big changes improve, just like you would looking at your administrative data. And the thing you get is one of these reports that shows you how you did. And then certainly there are institutional and society ones. One of the examples well known when people are starting out in enhanced recovery, they'll go to the web page and they see that's ours at home, they'll see the ERAS database where you can put your cases in, get compared. You have lousy compliance when you start, that's all the red. Your compliance gets better, your outcomes get better. So those do exist. They are also expensive. They also need somebody to put the data into them. They're not abstracted or connected to Epic. And then I'd say the last category that I wanted to mention was research. These we are going to do because we're surgeons and we want people to get better. So we all have our case logs. We all make little notes in the margins next to our stickies. And I think that likely this is the stuff that's the most valid when you read a case series or a small research project, but it's not going to be necessarily applicable widespread. And one of the examples that where we're trying to get a little more applicable widespread would be some of the work Leanne and I are doing with Enhanced Recovery and NSQIP. So we're using a database that existed, put some extra variables in there, and we're comparing those variables when we take them out. And this is the kind of stuff that you can get out of either a research project or using some already established database to try and superimpose other factors onto it, where you say, wow, you know, the better we did on enhanced recovery, the shorter our length of stay. Again, gross generalization as to better, whether they were better recovered. But we certainly are seeing that this is going to correlate to fewer complications. And when you go from this kind of stuff, your nurses all suddenly get paged, your interns fall asleep, you're trying to talk to somebody. But when you put this up, all of a sudden you have an incredibly powerful tool for feedback, which is why I think the main thing we should be interested in our auditing is not our next publication, but rather how we can share our outcomes with each other and also with the members of our team. For me, the most important thing for feedback is that it needs to be frequent and often to anyone and everyone who will listen. So it's when you pass somebody in the hallway, it's when you're working on protocol development, and you finally get that order set built in Epic. That's the one thing I don't like so much. And every single opportunity that you have a chance to highlight somebody, if there's a nurses conference, if they have a clinical ladder, if you have APPs that are working together and you take them out for a pizza some night, and then also at very fixed intervals, so that one, you don't forget about it, but also people can come to expect it, so that every 6 months the big team gets together, you say, hoorah, look at how much we've done. And those numbers mean something to the people who are actually doing the work every day on the protocol. If you think about it, there's really not too much for surgeons to change. We have to give up the idea that people aren't allowed to eat, but we're already doing our operations as well as we can do them for the most part. The people that are changing and having to do things differently are all around us, and we really have to give that back to them. And focusing on the audit all the way through gives you those little points that then you can come back to them and say, thanks a lot for doing that. Look at this patient. Bring a patient to one of your meetings and have them tell a story. So in summary, I think the audit really needs to align with the protocol creation from the very beginning. You may not know where you'll get that data, but you need to know exactly what it is you're looking for, because as you go through the creation, you'll find the ways that you want to record things. Maybe it'll be have a patient enter it into an app. Maybe it'll be on the whiteboard. Maybe a nurse will volunteer. Let me follow your first 20 patients. All of those things will matter. And then the feedback becomes inherent to the process. Those people that have been involved with you then start to hear that patients are doing better. With that, I'd really like to turn it over and start doing some Epic stuff, or I'll be happy to take questions on my own. Thanks.